The Senate, the upper chamber of the U.S. Congress, is arguably the most important legislative body in the world, certainly the most powerful one in America. It passes bills, confirms judges and nominees, and oversees the executive branch of government. And as opposed to the executive branch, where usually one party holds most of the senior positions, the legislative branch is always a diverse body. The importance of the Senate has been even more highlighted in the past year. It's currently split 50-50, with Democrats holding the tie-breaking vote through Vice President Kamala Harris. It only takes one Democrat to derail the entire party's agenda, and so going into 2022, Democrats are looking to expand their majority within the Senate and finally get the votes to pass those big climate and voting reform bills. Unfortunately for Democrats, the political climate is very negative towards them. Joe Biden's approval rating is in the toilet. Inflation is high. Polarization is higher than ever, and historically, the president's party has not done well in the midterms. Worse yet, Republican gerrymandering has further damaged Democratic chances to pick up House seats in red states, and in the situations where Democrats have themselves tried to gerrymander, they've been foiled, such as in New York, where a catastrophic map is spelling disaster for the House delegation. Today, however, we'll be looking at just the Senate map, and the political situation in every seat just under half a year out, going in alphabetical order. Starting in Alabama, a safely red seat, Trump won by 25 points in 2020. Funnily enough, Democrats had won the other seat in a 2017 special election, mostly due to the Republican candidate being plagued by allegations of sexual and judicial misconduct. Richard Shelby, the current senator, and also a former Democrat who later switched to the Republican Party, is retiring, and the seat is in the midst of a hotly contested Republican primary. Mo Brooks, a representative who spoke at the Trump rally immediately preceding the Capitol riot, was initially the front-runner, receiving Trump's endorsement, but his campaign has faltered and Trump has resigned his endorsement. Now the two front-runners, Shelby's choice, his former Chief of Staff Katie Britt, and Michael Durant, a businessman and Army veteran. The Democratic primary has drawn several local candidates, including Brandon Dean, a local mayor, but the fact is that Alabama is the safe Republican seat, and the biggest political battle will probably be for the Republican nomination. So, in my hypothetical 2022 map, I have Republicans winning Alabama. Alaska is another interesting, safely red seat. Lisa Murkowski, the incumbent senator, is running for re-election, but she's faced criticism from Trump for her moderate views and her vote to impeach Trump in the wake of the Capitol riot. Kelly Tshibaka, a local Republican and former official, is Murkowski's main primary opponent and has received Trump's endorsement. Murkowski, in the meantime, is backed by Mitch McConnell and much of the GOP leadership. This, combined with a new four-way voting system that saw Murkowski winning with 44% of the vote in 2016 and the Libertarian candidate getting nearly 30%. Murkowski lost her 2010 primary as well, but became only the second senator in U.S. history to win the election as a write-in candidate. And she has mentioned the possibility of leading the Republican Party, something that would only be exacerbated by a potential primary loss. Although the state easily went for Trump when it comes to the Senate race, all of the uncertainties presented mean that I can't really classify it as a safe red seat. The chances of a Democrat picking it up is slim, but perhaps the Libertarian candidate will be able to beat Murkowski in the midterms. Perhaps Murkowski will defect and become an independent. So I'm rating Alaska as likely Republican. It looks like we're starting off with all the interesting races. Arizona is a state Biden won by only 10,000 votes. The incumbent astronaut Mark Kelly took office with 51% of the vote in a special election in 2020. He is unchallenged in the Dem primary. The Republican primary is a wide field, although not one as high profile as Alabama, Pennsylvania, or Ohio have been. The state Attorney General Mark Brnovich is the current frontrunner. With headwinds blowing in Republicans' favor, Arizona looks to be one of the best Republican pickup options. Ultimately, I'd rate the race a toss-up, but if I had to pick a side, it'd be a Democratic tilt. The midterms are still months away, and the Republican candidate is as of yet unknown. With the votes this close, even one tiny scandal could tip the balance, so the seat is looking as vulnerable as ever for Democrats. Alright, Arkansas, probably the first boring race. It is a safely red seat going for Trump with 59% of the vote. Incumbent John Boozman is running for re-election. He faces several primary challengers, including Jake Bucket, an NFL player and Army veteran, but right now he is certainly the favorite to win the primary. And it is, of course, a safe Republican seat. California is probably one of the blue states in the country, and Democrat Alex Padilla, appointed to fill Kamala Harris's vacated seat, is running for a full term in 2022. California is a big state, and so naturally has quite a few challengers, 23 to be exact, but Padilla is the favorite. The Republican primary is similarly crowded, with no clear frontrunner, but California is a safely Democratic seat, and there's almost no world in which the Republicans managed to pick a seat out. On to Colorado. Democratic Michael Bennet, the incumbent, is running for re-election. His races have been surprisingly close, garnering 48% and 49% of the vote. Granted, these were in 2010 and 2016, both red wave years. But with 2022 shaping out to be another red wave, his seat looks vulnerable. Nevertheless, with his opponent potentially being Ron Hanks, the state rep notable for attending the Capitol riot, the state is still leaning blue. Connecticut is a safe blue seat. Democrat Richard Blumenthal, the popular incumbent, is running for re-election with little primary challenge. The Republican field is splintered, and Blumenthal can be assured a pretty easy victory. Florida was once a state that was seen as the future of the Democratic Party. But with strong Republican support from Latinos, one of the biggest blocs in the state has slipped further and further right. Republican incumbent Marco Rubio is ready for re-election, with the Democratic field wide and splintered, including a representative, a former rep candidate, and various people of different professions. The seat is not firmly red, but enough for me to classify it as a lean Republican seat. Georgia is a seat that went blue in 2020 by the slimmest of margins, and one incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock won only through a runoff. The Republican leader, Herschel Walker, a former NFL player, has Trump's backing, and I'd rate the race as a toss-up, but if I had to pick a side, I'd give Herschel the seat. Warnock lost the general election by a wide margin. He only barely won the runoff, and it's still one of the most enticing potential GOP pickups. All hope is not lost for Democrats. Herschel has been hurt by abuse allegations. Together with Georgia's broader trend to the left and Warnock's incumbency advantage, it may give the Dems just enough to hold on. But unfortunately, I see the most likely result as Republicans picking up the seat. Hawaii is a safely blue state. Democrat Brian Schatz looking for re-election. Republican State Representative Bob Dermott is challenging Schatz, but seeing as Schatz won nearly 75% of the vote in 2016, a red wave year, I see no way in which McDermott wins. So Hawaii is a safely blue state. Idaho is a safely red state, with Republican incumbent Matt Crappo looking to coast the re-election. I don't really see any problems with him winning here. Illinois is a safely blue state. Tammy Duckworth, the Democratic incumbent, is expected to easily win re-election over a wide Republican field. In Indiana, a safely red state, incumbent Tong Young expected to beat Democratic nominee Thomas McDermott Jr., who has been the mayor of a city called Hammond for 18 years. Nevertheless, Indiana has been a Republican seat for a while, and I don't see it flipping anytime soon. In Iowa, Chuck Grassley, the oldest Republican senator, is seeking re-election to his sixth term. Trump won Iowa by 8%, but Grassley's solid incumbency advantage is enough for me to rate this as a solidly Republican seat. Kansas is another safe Republican seat. Incumbent Jerry Morey is seeking re-election. Continuing the trend of safe Republican seats, Rand Paul won the primary and is expected to win the upcoming Kentucky Senate election. Topping off the streak of safe Republican seats, one-term incumbent John Kennedy from Louisiana won in 2016 with 60% of the vote and is expected to do so again. Maryland was a seat that perhaps could have been put into contention if popular Republican Governor Larry Hogan had decided to run. He declined, and Democratic incumbent Chris Van Hollen will probably challenge whoever the GOP produces, so I'm rating Maryland as a solid Democrat state. Missouri is the first interesting state in a while. Similar to Alaska, the idea of a Democratic winning the state is incredibly unlikely, but the field for the Republican nomination is crowded and controversial, featuring two representatives, the Attorney General and the frontrunner former Governor Eric Gritkins, who resigned following allegations of sexual assault. If Gritkins wins, we may see a repeat of 2017 Alabama, but the Democratic field is crowded with no candidates with strong governmental resumes. The seat is likely Republican. Again, the only way I see Democrats picking up the state is if Gritkins wins, and the backlash from that is as strong as it was in Alabama. Okay, on to Nevada. Nevada is actually an interesting race. On the one hand, it's a must-win for Democrats if they want to hold on to the Senate. Biden won the state by a little over 30,000 votes. Incumbent Catherine Cortez Mastro faces a tough race against former Nevada Attorney General Adam Laxalt. The seat leans Democratic narrowly, but only very narrowly. And again, it's a must-hold for Democrats if they want to hold on to their majority in the Senate after the midterms. New Hampshire was another close state in 2020, one with a Republican governor. The Dems have the incumbency advantage. Maggie Hassan holds the seat, but similar to Nevada, it's a must-win seat if Dems want to hold on to the Senate. Biden won by 7 points, and the seat is likely D with no clear Republican frontrunner, but with the way the wind's blowing, Dems should be careful. New York is a very solid Democratic seat. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, is the incumbent and running for re-election, and has skillfully managed to fend off any significant primary challenge from the left. And with his opponent being Joe Pinion, a Newsmax TV host, the Republicans had virtually no chance of winning in New York. North Carolina is a state similar to Georgia. It has slowly trended to the left in recent elections, but Trump still carried the state by several points. It's an open seat, with the primaries being held only several days ago. Ted Budd, a U.S. representative, beat former Governor Pat McCrory for the Republican nomination. Terry Beasley, a former North Carolina Chief Justice, is the Democratic nominee. North Carolina is a likely Republican state. John Hoeven, senator from North Dakota, won the state with almost 80% of the vote in 2016. So, this is about as safe as a red state as you can possibly find. And Rob Portman, the Republican incumbent from Ohio, is actually retiring. Representative Tim Ryan has won the Democratic nomination, and Trump-backed book author J.D. Vance has won the Republican nomination. Trump took Ohio by 8 points, so the seat is likely going red, but with the seat open and the more qualified candidate in the blue camp, there's always a chance. So again, I am rating Ohio likely Republican. Oklahoma is a safe Republican seat, one with 2 Senate elections this year. One a special election due to the incumbent retiring, the other the regularly scheduled election. Incumbent James Lankford will most likely win the latter seat, and although the Republican nominee for the former seat is yet to be decided, the seat will probably land red no matter the result. Oregon is safely blue, with incumbent Rod Wyden set to win. Pennsylvania is certainly the most interesting race of the entire cycle, and probably one of the most hotly contested ones as well. States like Arizona or Georgia, despite having closer margins, both have incumbents running for re-election. PA is an entirely open seat, and an election is said to be accompanied by an election for the open governor seat. The former senator was a Republican, the former Democrat was a governor. The primary ended only a few days ago, and as I write this, neither Mehmet Oz nor David McCormick has a decisive lead in the Republican Senate primary. The Republican primary was a race between McCormick, a wealthy hedge fund CEO, Oz, a Trump-endorsed TV commentator, and the far-right candidate Kathy Barnett. The Democratic primary was a race between progressive Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and moderate Representative Conor Lamb, with Fetterman coming out on top. Biden won Pennsylvania by 80,000 votes, and Fetterman is the kind of person who not only seems likely to energize the Democratic base, but also to even attract hardcore Trump voters with his rugged, approachable personality, and he's pro-weed, pro-union, and opposed to mask mandates. All things which are potentially popular with some Trump voters. Oz, who's narrowly leading McCormick, is a Turkish-American, liable to being painted as a carpetbagger, considering the fact he isn't from PA, and a liberal running as a Republican for political gain. He has espoused pro-abortion views in the past. At least that's what an opponent could paint him as. So, again, especially with how, with the current status of the Republican voter base, all of these things are not necessarily positives working in his advantage, and so him as a candidate is actually very risky. In any case, the PA election is turning out almost perfect for the Dems this year, which is a rarity in what looks to be a catastrophic election. So I rate Pennsylvania as leaning Democrat. GOP Senator Tim Scott is seeking re-election in South Carolina, and his high popularity, strong election records, incumbency advantage, and the general backtrack of the midterms is enough for me to rate the seat as solid Republican. That again. Although John Thune has faced some criticism from Trump, he's one of the most popular senators in the country. He's expected to brush off any primary and general election challengers on his way to a 4th term, so South Dakota is a solid Republican seat. In Utah, incumbent Republican Mike Lee is facing off against Democratic-endorsed independent candidate Evan McCollum. However, the solidly Republican seat is very unlikely to flip. In Vermont, Patrick Leahy, the Democratic incumbent, is not running for re-election, but the state is firmly blue. And the popular at-large rep, Peter Welch, should snatch the election. Vermont is a safe blue state. In Washington, Democratic Patty Murray is looking for a 6th term and will most likely win this solid blue state. And lastly, Wisconsin, a state that leans red. The state went for Biden by 20,000 votes, and although the incumbent Ron Johnson is a Republican, he won his re-election with only 50.2% of the vote, despite 2016 being a wave year. The Democratic field is split, but the frontrunner, Mandela Barnes, is the lieutenant governor, giving him a valuable political credibility that's probably necessary to win in the narrowly contested state. Additionally, Johnson pledged to serve only 2 terms. He is now running for his 3rd. Ultimately, the state still leans Republican, but it's one of Democrats' strongest pickup opportunities. That's my final map. Remember, we're still 6 months out. A lot can change. Many primaries still haven't finished, and Joe Biden may find a popularity boost in the home stretch to the race. If you look at my map, you see I have Democrats losing Georgia and picking up a seat in Pennsylvania. But a lot can change. Republicans can hold all their seats and potentially flip Nevada, Georgia, and Arizona. At the same time, they can nominate poor candidates and lose states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Missouri. The Senate election could really go either way. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video, and if you want to see more of it, make sure you like and subscribe.